Hello, everybody, and either welcome or welcome back to my podcast. As per usual, I want to remind everybody at the top, if you do like this, please rate, comment, and subscribe. You can find me on iTunes, Google Play, and Stitcher. Okay, so you've seen the title of the episode. You kind of already have an idea of what we're going to be talking about. But I do kind of want to go ahead and preface this by saying that this has got to have been the weirdest thing for people who don't spend a lot of time on the internet to have encountered on their timelines. It's kind of like 4chan just threw up all over everybody's timeline. Because now we get to talk about incels. And we get to talk about sexual redistribution. These are two ideas that are kind of stupid. And I'll go ahead and start this out just in case you don't know what an incel is. I will give you one of the nicer Urban Dictionary definitions of incel. Abbreviated term for the compound involuntary celibate. In Darwinian terms, a person deemed least fit to reproduce, manifest in social terms as somebody unable to copulate due to absence of even a single willing partner. More typically male than female. Hangs around on internet forums, generally blaming females for this undesirable condition. Unable to compete on the level playing field of sexual equality, can be seen clamoring for a return to the Middle Ages, when all that was needed to nab a woman was 2 cows and a quarter acre. Could be described a Darwinian loser whose gene pool is facing extinction unless they address negative personality traits and or get into physical condition necessary for attraction to the opposite sex. So why are we talking about these people? Well, I'm sure everybody remembers the Toronto van attack from about a couple of weeks ago now. I can't pronounce dude's name, so I'm just going to call him Toronto van guy. Basically went on a killing spree, and it was found that he was specifically targeting women. And it was found after the fact that I guess he had made some posts on Facebook about an incel rebellion. It's not entirely sure whether he was part of the incel community or not. But of course it brought up this topic because this isn't the first time somebody who's identified as an incel has gone on a killing spree targeting women. And so I guess now we're at the point where people want to write thought pieces about what do we do about incels. And apparently the reason we're going to talk about sexual redistribution is because one of those things that we're supposed to do to help them involved a lot of internet fuckery. I've got a couple pieces here that I want to talk about, mainly the 3 pieces that kind of drove this little internet news cycle. And I'll go ahead and start with the piece that kind of jumped off the whole sexual redistribution thing. I'm going to go a little more in depth on 2 of these pieces. And as per usual, links to everything will be in the show notes. So the first one we're going to start with is a piece by Robin Hanson, who is an economist and allegedly a libertarian. The title of the piece is 2 Types of Envy. And let's go ahead and kind of start jumping to where the problematic parts of this are. First paragraph. I've long puzzled over the fact that most of the concern I hear expressed on equality is about the smallest of, at least 7 kinds, income inequality between families of a nation at any given time, abbreviated into IIBFNAT. Expressed concern has greatly increased over the last half-decade. While most people don't actually know that much about their income ranking, many seem to be trying hard to inform those who rank of their low status. Their purpose seems to be to induce envy, to induce political action, to increase redistribution. They hope to induce these people to identify more with this low income status and to organize politically around this shared identity. Hold that thought in your head because we're going to start taking this idea of income inequality and taking it way the fuck over here to apply to sex. Many concerned about IIBFNAT are also eager to remind everybody of and to celebrate historical examples of violent revolution aimed at redistribution. The purpose here seems to be to encourage support for redistribution by reminding everybody of the possibility of violent revolution. They remind the poor that they could consider revolting, and remind everybody else that a revolt might happen. This strengthens an implicit threat of violence should redistribution be inefficient. And then after that he goes on to cite a news source that he doesn't... he does link it, but basically talking about the Toronto van guy and incels in general. So, skipping forward to what he writes, here we go. One might plausibly argue that those with much less access to sex suffer from a similar degree as those with low income, and might similarly hope to gain from organizing around this identity, to lobby for redistribution along this axis, and to at least implicitly threaten violence if their demands are not met. As with income equality, most folks concerned about sex inequality may explicitly reject violence as a method, at least for now, and yet still be encouraged privately when the possibility of violence helps move others to support their policies. In parentheses, sex could be directly redistributed, or cash might be redistributed in compensation. What the fresh hell Handmaid's Tale fuckery is that? Did you just seriously suggest that sexual redistribution should be a thing and it should be done under the threat of violence? Did you write that down and think it was a good idea, sir? 'Cause that's not. No. No. I read that and I had to put it down and walk away for a second because I was just like, what the fuck did I just read? That I couldn't. So, but wait, it gets worse. Okay, here is the last paragraph of the original piece. Strikingly, there seems to be little overlap between those who express concern about income and sex inequality. Among our cultural elites, the first concern is high status, and the latter concern lower status. For example, the article above seems not at all sympathetic to sex inequality concerns. Why the fuck should anybody be concerning themselves with that? It's nobody's business what people do and do not do in the bedroom. And what? I'm sorry. What? So you want to institute some kind of program for sex redistribution? With the threat of violence? Are you fucking kidding me, dude? But, like I said, that was the end of the original piece. And then we've got addendums. We've got walkbacks. These are funny. So, first addendum. Although the news article I cite focuses on male complaints, my comments here are about sex inequality in general, applied to both men and women. Not that I see anything particularly wrong with focusing on men sometimes. Let me also clarify that personally I'm not very attracted to non-insurance-based redistribution policies of any sort, although I do like to study what causes others to be so attracted. Alright, discuss this a little more when I discuss the Daily Beast piece, but in the incel community, there is a very bright white line drawn on this. This doesn't involve women at all. No, you don't try to walk this back by trying to put women into it. This has nothing to do with women who can't get laid. The incel community has nothing to do with that. The second addendum to the piece. A tweet on this post induced a lot of discussion on Twitter, much of which accused me of advocating enslaving and raping women. Apparently many people can't imagine any other way to reduce or moderate sex inequality. In parentheses, redistribution literally means changing the distribution. No shit, fuckwad. We know what redistribution means. Thank you for that, though. In the post, I mentioned cash compensation. More cash can make people more attractive and better able to afford legalized prostitution. Others have mentioned promoting monogamy and discouraging promiscuity. Surely there are dozens of other possibilities. Sex choices are influenced by a great many factors, and each such factor offers a possible lever for influencing sex inequality. Rape and slavery are far from the only possible levers. Okay, let me go ahead and just take a moment here and read for you guys the Merriam-Webster definition of rape. Rape. Noun. First definition. An act or instance of robbing or despoiling or carrying away a person by force. Definition number 2. Unlawful sexual activity and usually sexual intercourse carried out forcibly or under the threat of injury against the will, usually of a female, or with a person who has been seen as beneath a certain age or incapable of valid consent because of mental illness, mental deficiency, intoxication, unconsciousness, or deception. Now, allow me to go back and read the pertinent paragraph from the original piece. One might plausibly argue that those with much less access to sex, suffer to a similar degree as those with low income, and might similarly hope to gain from organizing around this identity, to lobby for redistribution along this axis, and to, at least implicitly, threaten violence if their demands are not met. You're fucking advocating rape, you fucking chucklehead. That's the literal definition of rape. Do not say that you are not advocating for that. It's what you fucking wrote. Oh my god, I can't even. No. No. Now let's go back to reading more of the second addendum to the piece. Many people are also under the impression that we redistribute income mainly because recipients would die without such redistribution. In rich nations, this can account for only a tiny fraction of redistribution. Others say it is obvious that redistribution is only appropriate for commodities and sex isn't a commodity. But we take from the rich even when their wealth is in the form of far from commodity unique artworks, buildings, etc. Oh my god, where do I start with this? Okay, listen. I am not for redistribution of any damn thing. But there's a big difference between not having money to be able to buy food, because without food you will die, and not having enough money to pay for sex, which will not fucking kill you. Nobody's ever died from not having sex. People die from not eating. That's where redistribution of income, well, at least y'all's argument for it, comes from. So I don't know how exactly you apply it to this, because this is not a life or death situation. Does it suck to not have sex? Sure. Will you die? No. So to conflate the two is just so insane to me. Like, what the fuck were you even thinking coming up with this argument? And for the last part of this piece, or at least the last part that I can deal with without throwing my phone at the wall in front of me, because I just can't even with this. Also, it should be obvious that sex here refers to a complex package that is desired, which in individual causes may or may not be satisfied by sex bots or prostitutes. But whatever it is the package that people want, we can and should ask how we may get more of it to them. First of all, no, we may fucking not. It is not anybody's business to make sure anybody gets laid. But what the fuck what the fuck? What the fuck is this? And second of all, dude, incels are aware that prostitutes exist. They're not idiots. They are aware that there are women that you can pay for sex. They don't like those women. That's part of the group of women that they hate. So no, they're not trying to pay for sex. And also, if, like most incels seem to think, if you feel like you are owed something, in this case, sex and companionship, hell no, you're not going to pay for it. They're not those people. They're not the kind of guys who are trying to like pay to have a prostitute or pay for a sex robot. If sex robots ever exist, I'm sure they will cost a lot of money. I'm pretty sure they're not trying to pay for them. But this is the jump off for the whole sex redistribution conversation. And obviously everybody on Twitter lost their shit, rightfully, because this is fucked up. Like, who the fuck are you? What? The fucking Handmaid's Tale fuckery? I don't even understand what in God's name made you think that this idea was good and that you should write it down and post it on the internet and then tweet it out. Bad idea. Keep your bad takes to yourself. Don't share them with us. God damn it. Alright, moving on to another somewhat better piece. Not only for your blood pressure, but for mine too. The second one that kind of come out to start this is Mandy Stadmiller had written for Daily Beast a piece called Sympathy for the Incel, where she interviews a guy who is a self-identified incel, part of the incel community. His name is Jason Peterson, not to be confused with Jordan Peterson, no relation, although he is a fan of Jordan Peterson's. But this piece is, of course, like I said, I'll link it in the show notes. It's hard to read this piece and not feel bad for this kid because he explicitly rejects the violence of the incel movement. He rejects a lot of the misogyny. And when you read his backstory and kind of the shit that he's been through, I mean, he grew up without a father. He's apparently just incredibly harassed and bullied by women throughout his life. There's one instance in here of his first sexual encounter, which just sounds fucking horrifying. In fact, this whole first relationship sounds fucking horrifying. But it kind of gives a window into the other side of this, where not everybody involved is some crazy-ass misogynistic kill-all-women people, but some of these guys just are legitimately, they have legitimate gripes, I guess I could say. And like I said, it's hard not to feel bad for this kid when you read this piece, because it's like, damn, like, I understand why you would feel this way because of the experiences you've had. But there are a couple different things I want to pull out of this piece to kind of discuss more about the incel community and kind of the mindset of these men. Here's a quote from Jason Peterson from the piece. "When I dropped out of high school, the one place I felt okay about stuff for a little while was when I was online," Peterson tells me. "By the time I discovered the incel culture on Reddit, it felt like, okay, I'm not insane. I was reading all these other guys' stories about how girls told them they were repulsive. I never identified with their misogyny, but I did identify with the rage and the hypocrisy of just how untouchable women were in society. No matter what awful thing a woman did, it was always supposed to be like, oh yeah, that's female empowerment. But when you have no friends and are getting bullied and humiliated by women constantly and are told to both man up and renounce your masculinity, it's like the one bright light you see in this is this community." Which this kind of speaks to something that I think is becoming a more prevalent problem, and something that people are starting to speak out more, and that's this idea that young men don't really know what their place is in society anymore, and it's kind of, you're in this awkward place where it's like you don't really know what you can say, what you can do, and if somebody is hostile towards you, especially if that person is a female, how exactly you can fight back against that. And so I do think it is creating this kind of sense of alienation and just wanting to basically unplug from the whole system and turn your back on it. Moving a little further along in the piece, there's a definition of what it is to be black-pilled, which is, I'm quoting here, "Essentially, the philosophy is that everything is broken and the answer lies in refusing to engage in a meaningful or constructive way with society." The phrase black pill first appeared in 2012 on a blog called Omega Virgin Revolt. "A critical part of being black-pilled is recognizing, with zero sentimentality or euphemism or explaining away, that women do not like genetically inferior men. They now have infinite options in the form of men who are higher status, be it economic, physical, or intellectual, because of the breakdown in societal monogamy, and how high-status men can game apps and use hypergamy, or dating up, to their advantage. Meaning, a less attractive woman will nowadays reject a less attractive male if she is suddenly able to have meaningless sex with a high-status man who can juggle multiple women. This leaves men who are not as good-looking in the dust. Incels theorize that once you are black-pilled, you are finally given the gift of brutal, honest Darwinian truth that, essentially, the game is rigged, so why bother? With such entrenchment in the truth of the doctrine becomes freedom. No longer do you have to run around in circles. You can accept the world for what it is and settle back into your status on the lower rungs." That is nihilistic as fuck. I can't imagine just giving up on trying to engage. As much of a cynic as I can be sometimes, I'm still here. I'm still trying to engage. But I bring that up because it's not hard to see where if you are that nihilistic, where you have just completely given up, where that can take some people to some very, very dark places. And that's where you get a lot of that virulent misogyny, a lot of the hate, a lot of the revenge fantasies, the rape fantasies, the death fantasies. It's, you can kind of see where it comes from. Not that it's justified or anything, but like I said, if you're going to go that nihilistic, then yeah, there's going to be a lot of people that are going to take it to really, really, really dark places. But the kid being interviewed in this piece does sound somewhat well-adjusted and actually somewhat hopeful about his situation. And that somebody is willing to openly identify as incel and go into the press right now is something. I mean, that's not going to be the easiest thing in the world to do, especially if you're not conforming to the stereotype being pushed right now of incels. So, like I said, links in the show notes. It's actually a really interesting piece. I do recommend everybody go read it. And I'm going to kind of bounce out of this one and move on to the third one, which... oh my God. I'm going to go ahead and say this, and I don't understand why I have to say this in this year, 2018, with as long as we've all been on the internet. But if you see a bad take on the internet, maybe don't co-sign it. Ross Douthat, talking to you. And actually, before I get into this piece, I would like to know, is there somebody I can tweet or I can write an email to over at the New York Times to keep Ross Douthat away from any other sexually related topics, to writing opinion pieces about them, because they never turn out well. They're creepy as fuck. Please stop publishing them. But here we are. Ross's piece, The Redistribution of Sex, by Ross Douthat. First paragraph. One lesson to be drawn from recent Western history might be this. Sometimes the extremists and radicals and weirdos see the world more clearly than the respectable and moderate and sane. Ross, stop. Stop. You can bounce out of this piece. You don't have to write this. You don't stop. Spoiler alert. He doesn't stop. Let's keep going with this first paragraph. All kinds of phenomena, starting as far back as the Iraq War and the crisis of the euro, but accelerating in the age of populism, have made more sense in the light of analysis by reactionaries and radicals than as portrayed by the organs of establishment opinion. This is part of why there has been so much recent agitation over universities and op-ed pages and other forums for debate. There's a general understanding that the ideological mainstream isn't adequate to the moment, but nobody can decide whether that means we need purges or pluralism, a spirit of curiosity and conversation, or a furious war against whichever side you think is evil. For those more curious than Marshall, one useful path through this thicket is to look at areas where eccentrics and extremists from very different worlds are talking about the same subject. Such overlap is no guarantee of wisdom, but it is often a sign that there's something interesting going on. Which brings me to the sex robots. At this point, if you know anything about Douthat, if you remember the piece that he did about the piece that the New York Times ran about teens watching porn, this is the part where you start making the cringe face because you know it's all about to go so fucking wrong. So fucking wrong. But he keeps going. He keeps going. Yeah. He references the Hansen piece that we've already discussed earlier, but he goes on to say that, but Hansen's post made me immediately think of a recent essay in the London Review of Books by Amira Servician, Does Anybody Have the Right to Sex? Servician, an Oxford philosophy professor, covered similar ground, starting with an earlier incel killer, but expanded the argument well beyond the realm of male chauvinists to consider groups with whom the London Review's left-leaning and feminist readers would have more natural sympathy. The overweight and disabled, minority groups treated as unattractive by the majority, trans women unable to find partners, and other victims. In her narrative of a society that still makes prisoners of patriarchal and also racist, sexist, homophobic rules of sexual desire. What? Can we just please acknowledge that people want to fuck who they want to fuck, and it really has nothing to do with racism or homophobia or transphobia or anything of the sort? But I digress. We'll move on here. Servician ultimately answers her title question in the negative. There is no entitlement to sex, and everyone is entitled to want what they want. But her negative answer was a qualified one. While no one has the right to be desired, at the same time, who is desired and who isn't is a political question, which left-wing and feminist politics might help society answer differently someday. This wouldn't instigate a formal right to sex exactly, but if a new world order worked as the revolutionary architects intended, sex would be more justly distributed than it is today. Ross, no. Stop. Stop now. Stop it. Don't go any further. Do not double down on this idea like you're about to do. Why did they even publish this? This is so bad. Like, this is just, it's so painful to read. Okay, let's try to move on a little further here. Alright, so skipping forward a little bit. This is Ross's words. By this I mean that as offensive or as utopian the redistribution of sex might sound, the idea is entirely responsive to the logic of late modern sexual life, and its pursuit would be entirely characteristic of a reoccurring pattern in liberal societies. What fucking reoccurring pattern are you talking about, dude? No. Redistribution has never been a pattern in liberal societies, and when I say liberal, I mean our definition of liberal, not his definition of liberal. I mean classic liberal. But what? Dude, no. Don't double down on the bad take. Stop. It doesn't stop, though. It keeps going. Let's go back to it. First, because, like other forms of neoliberal deregulation, the sexual revolution created new winners and losers, new hierarchies to replace the old ones, privileging the beautiful and the rich and the socially adept in new ways, and realigning others to new forms of loneliness and frustration. Okay, when I read this, I kind of think about it. It's almost like some people seem to have this idea of, like, full marriage, the way some people have this idea about full employment. Like, there was some golden age where everybody was employed. No, there wasn't. And there was no ideal age where this wasn't true, where people that were beautiful and wealthy didn't already have a competitive advantage in getting mates. So I'm not entirely sure why he's basing this off the sexual revolution. Like, this is a thing that's always been. Like, do you think Melania married Donald because of his charming wit and great personality, or because he's so fucking hot? No, she married him because he's rich. And he married her because she's beautiful. This has always been the way it is. Like, you can go back to Victorian literature, and there's characters that basically populate all the novels that for one reason or another are unmarriable. And it was always taken as kind of like this little joke thing, but I don't understand this concept. Like there's, like, everybody's supposed to have a mate. It's never been that way, and I don't know where these people are getting this kind of, like, weird utopian idea. Going forward in the piece. Second, because in this new landscape and amid other economic and technological transformations, the sexes seem to be struggling generally to relate to one another, with social and political chasms opening between them, and not only marriage and family, but also sexual activity itself in recent decline. Now, I have some thoughts about sexual activity being in recent decline that I'm kind of workshopping for future episodes, but it's nothing that's this simple. There's a lot of reasons why that is happening, and to think that sexual redistribution is really going to help that is a very, very weird take, I'll say. Yeah, no, there's a lot more going on there than what Douthat wants to give it here. Moving on. Third, because the culture's dominant message about sex is still essentially Hefnerian, despite certain revisionist attempts by feminists since the heyday of the Playboy philosophy, a message that frequency and variety in sexual experience is as close to a sunnum bonum as the human condition has to offer, that the greatest possible diversity in sexual desires and tastes and identities should not only be accepted but cultivated, and that virginity and celibacy are at best strange and at worst pitiable states. And this master narrative inevitably makes both the new inequalities and the decline of actual relationships that much more difficult to bear. I mean, okay, I guess. Embracing sexual diversity is now a bad thing. Is embracing all diversity a bad thing now? Can somebody let me know? But, and can we please take a chat take a moment to chat about dudes. Like, okay, first of all, you gave us Eros, and now you're giving us Sunum Bonum. Like, okay, we get it. You know words that are not part of the current cultural lexicon. We're real proud of you, Ross. Going forward with the piece, which in turn encourages people, as ever under modernity, to place their hope for escape from the cost of one revolution in a further one yet to come, be it political, societal, or technological, which will supply, if not the promised utopia, at least some form of redress for the many people that the progress has obviously left behind. There is an alternative, conservative response, of course, namely that our widespread isolation and unhappiness and sterility might be dealt with by reviving and adapting older ideas about the virtues of monogamy and chastity and permanence, and the special respect owed to the celibate. I mean, no. I mean, going backwards is not what society does. It goes forward. And I mean, there are certain areas of internet life, I guess I can say, there's certain strains of thought that are going back to celebrating the more trad life, but to expect all of society to go backwards is fucking stupid. Like, we don't go backwards, we go forwards. So, yeah, I don't really get bitching about that and expecting things to go back to how they were in this golden age that you have in your head that never really existed in the first place. But now we arrive at the problematic part of this Douthat piece, which, as if the whole thing wasn't problematic, this is the problematic paragraph. But I expect the logic of commerce and technology will be consciously harnessed, as already in pornography, to address the unhappiness of incels, be they angry and dangerous or simply depressed and despairing. The left's increasing zeal to transform prostitution into legalized and regulated sex work is in quotes, will have this end implicitly in mind. The libertarian, in parentheses, and generally male, fascination with virtual reality porn and sex robots will increase as those technologies improve. And at a certain point, without anybody formally debating the idea of a right to sex, right-thinking people will simply come to agree that such some rights exist and that it makes sense to look to some combination of changed laws, new technologies, and evolved mores to fulfill it. Again, what the hell is this Handmaid's Tale fuckery right here? First off, let's just go back and go through this whole fucking paragraph because there's so much here. There is so much here. I'm sorry, I wasn't aware that the left, or anybody for that matter, was advocating for the legalization of prostitution to help incels, people who don't like prostitutes in the first place. This has nothing to do with that. Why would you even bring that up? Like, legalizing prostitution has nothing to do with incels. I don't even get making this connection. Second of all, nice swipe at the libertarian males there, dude, but the libertarian females are interested in the VR porn and the sex robots too. Just want to put that out there. And then also, this idea that changed laws are somehow going to come into play here? Are you trying to argue the fact that there should be legally mandated sexual redistribution? Ross Douthat, are you really, really trying to make that argument? Because fuck you, no. No, 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 no. 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 I don't think I can say no enough times to this for y'all to understand how much no there is here. So much no. It just, I don't even, you know what? Let's just go ahead and do the last paragraph too, while we're here. Whether sex workers and sex robots can actually deliver real fulfillment is another matter. Oh, God damn it. But that they will eventually be asked to do it in service to a redistributive goal that for now seems creepy or misogynistic or radical feels pretty much inevitable. Oh my God. Who let him write this and publish it on the internet? Are you really trying to make the argument that prostitution is going to be legalized to deal with incels? Are you really making the argument that sex robots are going to be here for incels? You. This whole thing is ew. The whole idea is ew. But, I mean, I didn't think anybody could make it creepier than Hansen made it, but goddamn, Ross Douthat, you really fucking came through and made it creepy as fuck. Like, I don't even know what to say to those last two paragraphs other than, ew, what the fuck is wrong with you? And please don't ever write anything about anything sexual ever again. Please. Thank you. All right. Now that I got all that out, here's kind of my not making fun of people overarching idea about this, and the reason I do have a problem with the Hansen piece and the Douthat piece in particular is there is this idea among incels that you are owed sex, and making pieces like that discussing sexual redistribution and whether it should be done and how it should be done reinforces and validates that idea that somebody is owed sex is a valid idea and that there is something that should be done about it, which, no, there's nothing, do not do anything about that. That's not anything that anybody should ever be concerned with. And I don't like people trying to validate that idea. I feel like that's really dangerous, and it gives ammunition to those who feel like they are owed something, because now you have these pieces written by serious people saying, hey, let's discuss how this would go down. Let's discuss how we would get incels laid, which it's, no, don't, no. It's just, the whole concept needs to be done away with. Nobody is owed anything. You're definitely not owed sex. You're not owed companionship. Sexual redistribution, like every other form of redistribution, can fuck off. And that's about it. So, let me go ahead and wrap this up. If you stuck with me this long, thank you so much. Please rate, comment, and subscribe. You can find me on iTunes, find me on Google Play, you can find me on Stitcher. Take care, and until next time.